Hey, in this video, we're going to talk about pouring oil on troubled waters to supersize and grow your business. Well, what the heck does that mean? Now, here's one of those idioms and expressions that I personally will admit I had wrong in my mind. When I read it today, I thought it meant one thing, and then when I read the meaning, I'm like, oh, I have this totally backwards. And how often do we think we understand a communication or a situation, or that our interpretation or reading of the situation is right, only to come to find out that we were absolutely positively the opposite of what we thought something was. I know it happens to me once in a while, not super often, but it does happen. And today is a perfect instance of that. So pouring oil on troubled waters. What does that mean and where did it come from? Actually, it's been around since 731 AD. It was believed that if you were to pour oil on stormy ocean waves, it would calm them down. Now, logically, I'm not sure that that makes sense. And how would you even effectively pour oil on water? I don't think it would be possible to calm the stormy seas. And maybe that's part of the meaning behind it too, is sometimes we expect that we could do the impossible, or we know that we can't do something that's impossible to get a result or an effect that we want. But my thought about this and my experience about oil and water together was that they don't mix, right? We think oil and water don't mix. If I pour water in a hot pan of grease or in a hot pan too soon, it will bubble up and explode. That happened to my sister. She actually had put water in a pan of hot grease and it exploded and burnt her arms and her face, and she experienced massive pain by trying to mix oil and water. So I think the belief that oil and water don't mix, because they usually don't. I mean, oil spills in the ocean, not a good thing, right? Mixing hot oil and water, not a good thing, not a good effect, not the result that we want. But pouring oil on troubled waters means something just the opposite. It means to have the ability or the skills and the tact to smooth over troubled waters, to smooth over a difficult situation. I believe that this expression is, the entire reason that we have customer service in our organizations and in our businesses. It's why we have to smooth over their misunderstandings or miscommunications. It's why we communicate with our employees, with our partners, with anybody, with our customers in the first place, is to make sure that we're on the same page, that we have a clear understanding of our arrangements, of our businesses, of the way we define things, of where we're going with what we're doing in providing a product or service for our customers. So to pour oil on troubled waters is really an important skill to have. Now, I will say it's a skill that I'm probably lacking in. I'm not the most tactful person. I tend to be in your face up front, and this is how I see it. You may or may not see it this way, but this is how I see it as an outsider looking in. And that isn't for everybody. Some people need a much more tactful way of being dealt with. Some customers need that. And it's our responsibility and our job and our role to kind of gauge the type of people that we're attracting to our business and treat them the way they want to be treated. And to also be, a little bit sensitive that everybody's different and we all have different needs and we all have different ways of wanting to be communicated with and wanting to be served. And that is how you supersize your business, by understanding that in some instances, even if you're not the person that is tactful and able to smooth over misunderstandings or misinterpretations or difficult situations, you ought to have somebody in your corner that can. Some of us have lawyers in our corner that help us smooth over really difficult misunderstandings and situations. Other times we have people in our organizations or in our families perhaps that play that role. My daughter is absolutely naturally incredible at being a peacemaker and a go-between medium. She's just amazing at that. Worked a lot with my marriage between my husband and I. She was always the person that was reading the energy and understanding that she could have an impact and make both of us feel better. And so I think it's important that we find that person, and we have access to a person with those skills and abilities if we aren't that person. And I know for a fact that I'm not that person, so I need to search out and have a person like that in my life and in my organizations to make sure that customer service gets dealt with properly. And I won't say that because with respect to customer service, I don't believe that the customer is always right. I spent too many years as a quality professional and building systems and procedures and processes for companies to know that, guess what? 100% of the people are not altruistic and 100% honest. But for the most part, if somebody comes to you with a concern, it's usually a valid concern, and you have to treat it as such and investigate it as such. And I tend to go bend over backwards to make things right for customers, my own customers especially, but even when I was working in corporate America, it's like, I wouldn't say, well, that's impossible. I would always say, well, how could that have possibly happened? And then I would go about investigating, and some of the most unlikely things that I could have ever imagined that people brought to our attention, thank goodness, actually did happen because of a breakdown in one of our processes. And by changing that process and procedure, we totally impacted in a positive way the quality and the results that all of our other customers got. So it was always a win-win situation. But customer service, dealing with people, communication, partnerships, anything that involves human beings, there has to be some ability to pour oil on troubled waters, to make sure that our communications are clear, to make sure that we're all on the same page, and that we understand what each of our role is in everything that we're doing. That's it. I would love to hear if you have any examples of pouring oil on troubled waters that you've done, that you've been able to, dispel a big misunderstanding. Or sometimes we have to save our company with big misunderstandings. Sometimes the troubled waters are really, really troubled. I'd love to hear your stories about that. Share in the comments below, or any feedback or information you have for me. And I'll, of course, be back tomorrow with another interesting perspective on how to supersize and grow your business. Take care.